So I want to welcome you to Table Talk. And Table Talk specifically is around just talking about blackness and what it is, really speaking about how different we are and how diverse we are as a community, and then bringing it all in so that we can see the differences that we have, but also the similarities and the magic that we have as well as black people. Any questions? No questions?
Not yet.
Okay. So my name is Corey. I actually have my own little nonprofit. It's called Brotherhood, specifically for transmasculine individuals. If you don't know what transmasculine is, we'll get into it later on in the presentation. But it's for these specific individuals in the Bay Area to access resources. Because as black people, we lack resources, especially here in Oakland with gentrification, with politics, with everything. There's just so many syndemics or issues that come with being black, whereas we're held back. How about you, my brother?
Hello, everyone. Let me turn around. My name is Omega. I am the founder of Trans of Anarchy. And people hear the trans, but it doesn't just stand for trans individual. It's about transitioning and going against the grain as a black individual, uneducating and re-educating yourself with the understanding from a trans, from a transitioning perspective. So that's what I do. Real black focus, especially with our black men in general, because I believe that we are the real foundation and we were taken away. And in order for us to become back as one, we have to rebuild our men first, and then we can rebuild ourselves together as a family. So as y'all see, I'm here with my brother, and we're just gonna try to educate y'all and let y'all see how we are all first black before we are anything and everything else. So I should do that.
Cool. So before we get into a little exercise that we're gonna do, I have two short videos to show y'all. Trigger warning if you're feeling some type of way, because it might be traumatic to you. You can feel free to, step away for a second or whatsoever. If you have any questions or concerns, you can also address that as well. We're an open space. I really acknowledge unapologetic blackness. And what that means is that there's no right way to ask a question. There's no wrong way to ask a question. There's no ignorant question. There's no dumb questions, right? And we're also open to, how can I say this? We're also open to constructive criticism. And also we're open to people asking questions that may or may not be the regular questions you ask people outside, okay? So this is an open forum and an open space. I ask that we do keep it respectful. Since we have a small group, it makes no sense in us really doing community agreement, because I'm sure we're all here and we're here to learn, we're here to listen, we're here to talk, and also we're here to just kind of talk about specifically black things in general, okay?
Ever since Donald Trump won the election with small majorities in a few key states, there's been a huge amount of attention paid to the white working class, what their concerns are, what their troubles are, and what problems they face. But in the rush to understand what's happening to white Americans, it is very important that we do not forget the deeper and longer term problems that are faced by black Americans, which did not change on election day.
Black families have the highest level of food insecurity of any population group in the United States. 1 in 5 black families live in households that are food insecure, as compared to 1 in 10 white families.
Almost 4 in 10 black children are in a household that is in poverty, which is twice the rate that is faced by other racial groups.
Black families in America live in substandard housing conditions at almost twice the rate, actually more than twice the rate, of white families in this country.
Among prime-age black men, 1 in 5 are not in the labor force, which is twice the non-employment rate for other groups.
Although blacks and whites use marijuana at approximately the same rate, blacks are over 3.5 times more likely to get arrested.
For every dollar that's earned by a white worker, 74 cents is earned by a black worker. The levels of debt that black college graduates have, it is twice the level of college debt for whites.
The likelihood of an African American woman being incarcerated in the United States over her lifetime is 1 in 18. That's as compared to the likelihood of white women being incarcerated, which is 1 in 111. Over the course of a lifetime, a black man has a 1 in 3 chance of incarceration, as compared to white men who have a 1 in 17 chance.
For a black child born into the bottom 20% of the income distribution, about half of them, 50%, will still be there as adults.
We are not saying that other disparities suffered by other groups are unimportant. Indeed, we think it is very important that we pay attention to the disparities that every vulnerable group suffers. However, at this time in our history in America, it is most important that we do not lose sight of the very specific disparities and inequities suffered by African Americans historically and currently in the United States of America.
So that's one of the things that I want you to keep in your mind as we're going farther into what we're going to talk about, okay? I got one more video for you before we start talking.
Slavery, the treatment of human beings as property, deprived of personal rights, has occurred in many forms throughout the world. But one institution stands out for both its global scale and its lasting legacy: the Atlantic slave trade, occurring from the late 15th to the mid-19th century and spanning 3 continents, forcibly brought more than 10 million Africans to the Americas. The impact it would leave affected not only these slaves and their descendants, but the economies and histories of large parts of the world. There had been centuries of contact between Europe and Africa via the Mediterranean, but the Atlantic slave trade began in the late 1400s with Portuguese colonies in West Africa and Spanish settlement of the Americas shortly after. The crops grown in the new colonies, sugarcane, tobacco, and cotton, were labor-intensive, and there were not enough settlers or indentured servants to cultivate all the new land. American natives were enslaved, but many died from new diseases, while others effectively resisted. And so, to meet the massive demand for labor, the Europeans looked to Africa. African slavery had existed for centuries in various forms. Some slaves were indentured servants, with a limited term and the chance to buy one's freedom. Others were more like European serfs. In some societies, slaves could be part of a master's family, own land, and even rise to positions of power. But when white captains came offering manufactured goods, weapons, and rum for slaves, African kings and merchants had little reason to hesitate. They viewed the people they sold not as fellow Africans, but criminals, debtors, or prisoners of war from rival tribes. By selling them, kings enriched their own realms and strengthened them against neighboring enemies. African kingdoms prospered from the slave trade, but meeting the Europeans' massive demand created intense competition. Slavery replaced other criminal sentences, and capturing slaves became a motivation for war rather than its result. To defend themselves from slave raids, neighboring kingdoms needed European firearms, which they also bought with slaves. The slave trade had become an arms race, altering societies and economies across the continent. As for the slaves themselves, they faced unimaginable brutality. After being marched to slave forts on the coast, shaved to prevent lice, and branded, they were loaded onto ships bound for the Americas. About 20% of them would never see land again. Most captains of the day were tight packers, cramming as many men as possible below deck. While the lack of sanitation caused many to die of disease, and others were thrown overboard for being sick or as discipline, the captains ensured their profits by cutting off slaves' ears as proof of purchase. Some captives took matters into their own hands. Many inland Africans had never seen whites before and thought them to be cannibals, constantly taking people away and returning for more. Afraid of being eaten, or just to avoid further suffering, they committed suicide or starved themselves, believing that in death their souls would return home. Those who survived were completely dehumanized, treated as mere cargo. Women and children were kept above deck and abused by the crew, while the men were made to perform dances in order to keep them exercised and curb rebellion. What happened to those Africans who reached the New World, and how the legacy of slavery still affects their descendants today, is fairly well known. But what is not often discussed is the effect that the Atlantic slave trade had on Africa's future. Not only did the continent lose tens of millions of its able-bodied population, but because most of the slaves taken were men, the long-term demographic effect was even greater. When the slave trade was finally outlawed in the Americas and Europe, the African kingdoms whose economies it had come to dominate collapsed, leaving them open to conquest and colonization. And the increased competition and influx of European weapons fueled warfare and instability that continues to this day. The Atlantic slave trade also contributed to the development of racist ideology. Most African slavery had no deeper reason than legal punishment or intertribal warfare, but the Europeans who preached a universal religion and who had long ago outlawed enslaving fellow Christians needed justification for a practice so obviously at odds with their ideals of equality. So they claimed that Africans were biologically inferior and destined to be slaves, making great efforts to justify this theory. Thus, slavery in Europe and the Americas acquired a racial basis, making it impossible for slaves and their future descendants to attain equal status in society. In all of these ways, the Atlantic slave trade was an injustice on a massive scale, whose impact has continued long after its abolition.
Anyone have anything like that they're feeling right now after seeing those two videos?
So many times we hear that slavery is old and we need to get over it.
So I wanted to point out, I'm happy we're here to talk about it, right? Any and every black person that lives in California, you need to know that you're strong.
Yeah.
Because California is the most racist place you could be. There's blatant racism and there's underlining racism. Blatant racism is basically, I don't like you, stay away from me, I'm forewarning you and you know. Underlining racism is different because we're intermixed here in California. Because it's classism and it's racism. And it's like that other places too, but it's more intermixed here. Whereas you're having situations where your next door neighbor might be white and they might say hi to you. You might be invited to the barbecue or whatever they have, but behind closed doors, they're plotting your demise, right? And so these situations, like everything that you three have said, is real and it's valuable. Also, it's intergenerational, and I love that. You've got someone who said, hey, I'm 58 years old. You can't do this, right? Or I feel angry, but you can't suppress it. You've got someone else that's like younger and saying, hey, this is what I'm noticing as I'm getting older as a black man, right? So all these things come together. You as well. When we talk about gentrification, when we talk about underlining racism, when we talk about racism, when we look at these videos that we first showed you, it's because we want to get you thinking about blackness in a way where when we're going out into the world, totally we have biases. And it stemmed from white supremacy and colonization. It sure is. So we're always judging each other. But the situation at hand is that we want you to step back and see why we're judging each other and somehow stop judging each other or make steps towards equality. And so that happens by having an aha moment. This is that aha moment where there are so many different black people in the room, but when we're watching these things and when you're talking, we all feel what you're saying because we get it. We might have not experienced it in a way that you experienced it, but we feel it because we're interconnected.
How come it was being narrated by somebody white? Well, how can you tell? You can tell.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can tell when the person is speaking, you can tell.
White
So,
people are the keepers of history.
Yeah.
Because white people stole the history, right? And so we have to be realistic about that,
Well, they got ours too, and he had hit it.
right? Remember Black Panther, the movie. Have you seen Black Panther?
Oh, yes.
Remember when Killmonger was in the museum? And he was like, I know what this is. They were like, yes, you know, this is not.
Oh,
And he was
yes.
like, That's my people's stuff. You're telling me something that I already know.
Yes.
And you're also telling me that you didn't steal that. So I'm taking it back, right? There's something called griots. We have griots and orishas. They're phenomenal beings. They've been here from the beginning and they're still here. Every black community has their own griot, right? And that's the people who tell the stories. They tell history. And it's verbal. Does that make sense? It's not written down sometimes. We should write it down. But again, that's not traditional like we did in Africa. So we still do have those people that are historically telling other people and teaching other people these things. It's just that if we're talking about videos or production or mass production or whatsoever, it sells. Black pain sells.
To truly have 20/20 vision is to truly have an open mind. You see what your mind thinks first. So if you put it in your mind, you believe it in your mind, then your retina and all that is going to put it on up out there, right? So even just like with the 3 icebreaker questions that he just asked us, we love being black. Now, let me change those questions around. Do you love what comes with? How many of us love what comes with being black?
I mean, everything? Well,
Everything that comes with being black. Tell me you love that.
I accept it because
Right,
I can't.
we accept it.
But
yes.
do you love
But
it?
do
Do
you
I
love it?
I'm working on it. I'm working
But
on
should you, and that's my thing, no matter how much we go through, we take, they say, they do, it don't change our blackness. It don't change the love that we have for ourselves. So to say that we love being black, I mean, you gotta love thy neighbor and thine everybody else that's black too. There is no divide in who's a better black than the next black. You know, we have to accept that. So to work on that, we have to put that in our mind. We have to see that. We have to cut down. So when we say we raised our hands, I have did something or reacted a different way due to how you look, due to how you presented yourself. I didn't go in a certain area due to what I perceived that I was gonna get or not get. You know? There's this show that's out right now called, what is it called? Cherish the Moment. I don't know if anybody have heard of it or even seen it, but right now it's a TV series, it's on matter of fact. And it's black, of course, it's a black show, but it's about a black woman who grew up in the hood, but very open-minded, under the mentorship of Cicely Tyson, out of all people, you know what I'm saying? And then she meets this light-skinned black man who mother and is high sedity, you know, the daddy came from the hood, but now they here, they're in the money. And it also just goes to show, even like he mentioned about Black Panther, how they want to see black people. You understand? But it's also how we want to see ourselves. You know, we can't, everybody want the money, but you want the money to be respected and presented in a certain kind of form. Not because it's gonna change you being black, because money don't change us being black, but it can change your blackness. And that's the big difference of us knowing who we are, for one, as a black community. You understand? Us walking down the street, you just sitting in here, you'll have a different perspective of us just seeing us walking down the street. Can we blame you? Is that your fault that you have that perspective? Is that our fault that we have that perspective?
No.
No. Is it your fault or my fault if I react to the way that you react to me? No. But it is your fault and my fault if I choose not to educate myself, or you choose not to educate yourself about your own self. At the end of the day, our blackness is our blackness, and we can't change who we are as black people. We can choose to, as you say, learn to how to love our blackness and everything that comes with it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
When we were talking again, when we were seeing those videos and we were talking about like the Atlantic slave trade and all these other things, and when they were talking about colonization and how that works, our perspective is pure colonization because everything was wiped out. So that means that we're operating and we're thinking and we're acting from another culture's scope. And so that's just also something to remember. So when Omega is talking about, I can't be mad at you and you shouldn't be mad at me, it's because, yeah, those are learned behaviors. However, in the end of this whole thing, hopefully we can be more open-minded about the differences of blackness because every black person's not the same. I grew up thinking every black person was the same because I was ignorant. I went to the South and was like, what's up, my man? Yada, yada, yada. And he was like, you know, what are you talking about? Right? And it takes those teachable moments and those learning situations and those uncomfortable conversations with other people to understand that we are all different. However, that's what makes us so genuine and golden when it comes to being black people. You know, when Kanye West says, I know people might not like Kanye. I'm sorry.
I love him.
I love Kanye. I love Kanye. I do. I don't agree with everything he says, but I love Kanye. And the reason why I love Kanye is because he said, the pain ain't cheap. And to see the evolution of Kanye when it comes to materialism and when it came to identity and then when it came to having money and when it came to marrying into a white family with money, then came the politics and the thought process, the mental health issues, and etc. Right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, we also have to remember that when we saw that video, what were the men doing? How did they stay in shape?
Dancing.
They were dancing, right?
Always the entertainment.
Oh,
Us black people, we are known for what?
Entertainment.
Entertaining. And even if we're gonna put a spin on it, because I'm black, but Puerto Rican people, if you look at them, they're always entertainers also. It's really crazy how slavery has definitely dug into the perception of who we are and what we actually, and what we create. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, as a dancer, I'm an Afro-Haitian dancer, and I've got responses from people, you know, our general education requirements, we have to pass intermediate algebra. So I'm in the intermediate algebra class, this was last year, you know, and the teacher is asking people, like, you know, what their name is and what their major is. And I said I'm getting my AA in dance here. I've been dancing a long time. And his thing was like, well, what do you need this class for? And it's like, because it's one of the requirements. I need to take it. And then there was a black woman who's in nursing. And he's asking her, well, what does she need it for? She said, because it's one of the requirements. Everybody has to pass the intermediate algebra. And if someone asks me, if I tell them I'm a dancer, and they're like, oh, like a club dancer, and I don't have anything against that, do whatever you want, but I was like, no, not a club dance. I mean, because when I dance, it's more of a spiritual, you know, the ancestors. When I'm on stage, I mean, people think because I'm on stage, it's about entertainment, but for me, it's about a spiritual connection with my ancestors, with, you know, the Most High. So, yes, and it's fine if you want to dance, entertain, and get paid. Why not? You know, I tell my son, I said, buddy, make your money. You know, get it. Don't let people try to talk you out of it.
So you're dancing to praise
Yes.
versus dancing to entertain.
Yeah.
So it's just which is a total big old difference.
Yeah, but
It's
people's
just
mindset
like-
always goes to
Auto-
the entertainment.
Automatically, just like when I said our mindset is when we think about this or the separation.
Yes.
We're conditioned to think a certain kind of way.
Yeah. And that's
And
one
we
of
have
the
to
things being a dance teacher is to have that connection with the young men and women, or however they identify, and say, it's okay if you want to be a professional dancer, but, you know, don't just go on the surface, you have to go deep.
Well, I think there's something deeper to this. What kind of dancing were they doing on that ship? Because they weren't dancing what the Europeans taught them. They were dancing their native dances.
Yes.
And so, you know, they were saying, you know, like they were in touch spiritually. Some would kill themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Others would, you know, do things to kind of like suffice the pain. African dance is one of those things. It's a very spiritual dance. It is something about Afro-Asian, African dance, other dances from Africa, whereas when people are dancing it, you're connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's also a way that we disconnected from the violence, from what was the trauma that was going on, right? So it's really important that we see that as well.
Yeah.
Also, when we talk about economy, who's in the Army right now? Who's in the Marines right now? Who's in the Air Force right now?
Us.
Black people are in those things.
Yeah.
What are they promised?
A life on the hill, and they'll be taken care of for
Yeah.
life.
Money, buy a house.
Right.
There's a meme online,
If
right?
they live,
Right.
if they make it through.
What are
There's
they
a-
fighting for?
Absolutely.
Right.
There's a meme that's being shared around on Facebook all the time. And the guy is in the service and he goes, shit, I don't want that charger no more. It's real. Because again, if we have historical trauma and we have all these things going on, and the first video we were talking about poverty and how, you know, 1 in 2 or 1 in 4 or 1 in 8 aren't even going to make the amount of money that white people make, we have to do whatever's necessary to get there. And what is necessary to get there?
Volunteer slavery.
That part. All right.
I have my nephew-in-law who, he and my niece, who have 4 children now, they started out as teachers, and I don't know what happened, but he went to officer school, and now he's over in Iraq, and I guess he's hopefully will be back in 3.5 months. We're all, you know, but I don't know what happened where they went from being teachers in North Carolina, having their own house and making good money, where he decided that he needed to, you know, go into the military, so.
You just said he was a teacher.
Yeah,
You felt like he was making good money and in a stable place, but they got 4 kids.
yeah.
You
And
know
a
what?
dog.
You know what 4 kids in 2020 look like, huh? Baby, you can. And teachers ain't never been making money.
Absolutely.
You know, they're the most important jobs, especially black teachers. The most important jobs are the less paying jobs. You know, and you know, a lot of people get mad at me when I say this, but even when it comes to being a police officer, we do the complaining that we complain about, but how many black police officers do we have? We can't complain about who protecting us and we ain't trying to protect our damn selves. This is just how I say it to people, plain and clear.
We seem to have a whole lot of police, so they sure are showing up
You
on
exactly
bars.
right. They're
They're
doing
like
exactly
all
what
over
they
the bars.
supposed to be doing, but when it comes to showing up for ourselves and
Yeah.
knowing who we are, just like he just said these main words, consumer. We stakeholders. We are consumers and stakeholders in our own stuff and don't even know it.
Yeah.
We're not even taking a claim or in investing in our own stake,
Yeah,
which is ourselves. How many times do we show up for ourselves? Right now, look how many chairs we got.
Black City Union.
But let us had said we were giving away something,
Come by and come.
or come do this, or then we have people to show up. See, we have lost the value and understanding that poverty automatically to people of color, of us black people, African Americans, whatever you want to claim yourself to be, as in not having no money. If you broke in your mind,
Yeah.
your pocket's gonna stay broke.
Absolutely.
If your mind is broke and I give you $1,000, you still broke
Cause you gonna spend it.
because you fit a.
Spend it up, yeah.
you're not gonna invest it.
You don't even know what to do with the money that you have. So what good is the money if your mental ain't right? If you don't open your mind and you ain't even understanding how to even spend your money. Because we not taught those things. And we take those things for granted and feel like, oh man, that's this, man, I'm too broke for that, I got broke for that, you know? And that's not us.
Yes.
We were dancing around, coming to grab, what? You standing over here, come on, get on up over here and this. We didn't allow ourselves to allow ourselves to be down.
Absolutely.
Because we're not used to that. We don't know what that feels like. But when we were brought over here, they done instilled in us that we started from the bottom. Nah, we were put at the bottom. But do we want to stay there at the bottom? We know it's hard to climb up. It's damn sure hard. But we said it in the beginning. We love being black. So loving being black is also loving and accepting and understanding what comes with that and fighting through that. That's me right here, bro.
Yeah, I think that even growing up, you know, we were taught different things. Black people was taught to go to school and acquire all of this fucking debt with school. Excuse my language. But you know, when I look at the world and I look at the people in it, everybody not going to school. You got people that's got businesses that ain't never went to school a day in their life. But they learn from their family because their family taught them how to do those things. Just like their family taught them how to save money and how to invest and how to do all of these things. But we weren't taught those things. We was taught to get money, move out the hood, spend our money elsewhere. But we didn't realize that was definitely not the way we were supposed to keep it home and keep it within our community. And I feel like because we have been misguided because of slavery. I feel like we have a completely different mindset on how to actually get through this life and get through it successfully. And it does not always require schooling the way we think and breaking our pockets to go to these schools and do all of these different things. When our ancestors didn't have those type of things, and they still was able to like maneuver and get through life, and some of them were able to even be successful business people, like that did not have all of these beautiful degrees that we expensively pay for. And these white families was like, oh, well, you don't want to go to school, well, that's fine. You just learn the family business. And that's that. And we weren't taught those things. Yeah. And so we have a completely misconstrued mind on how we can actually move through and be successful.
And I hear you.
Go ahead.
I hear you, but at the same time, that's the key situation.
Right.
White people, slavery, all this thing, and then we're gonna move on to something different. But white people in slavery, the thing about it is that, remember when there was a time when we were free, but we kept on working for free because we didn't know that we were free. And they had bonds and insurance on us because in reality, as the video said, we were 3/5 of people. So if we're talking about constitutions, all these things, these rules, these guidelines, these things that are supposed to protect common citizens, if you're less than a person, is that going to protect you? And also legacy goes into that, and also financial whatever goes into that as well. These people, when we were set free or whatever they want to call it, the situation they had is that they received money for us. They also were able to go and take advantage of land, right? So when we talk about what's the most expensive thing you can have, land. What's the most expensive thing you can invest in? Your family, land, businesses, stuff like that. But again, we can't be mad at black folks because in reality, we didn't know because we were never given that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's just one of those things where when we talk about legacy and when we talk about financial burdens and stuff like that, that's why it's important that those videos talked about it, where they were like, in reality, you're going to make less than this person. In reality, you're not going to have this thing because we just don't have the ability to get it. I mean, we do, but at the same time, you have to work harder to get it.
You gotta jump through a whole bunch of loops.
Absolutely. And there's always going to be something in society or syndemics or situations that are always gonna be like, stop. You gotta go around. You gotta go under now. You gotta go above, right? And that's the thing. To realize that in reality, legacy is what you want. Because that's how these white people are able to buy whatever they want. They can live however they want. They have less problems. Look at Oakland. Oakland's a great example. I was born and raised here. I'm from West Oakland. I'm from Acorn. I remember when Acorn had projects. I remember when it was the drug war. I remember when black people owned their houses. You go on my street right now, nobody has their homes.
They gave it all up, and then they have to.
Absolutely.
They gave it up. And then
Intergenerational.
They commute 3 hours just to come
get to Oakland.
Absolutely.
Come to work. They can't even afford to live.
Absolutely.
And so you can't get mad at what is happening in West Oakland.
Absolutely.
Because these grandparents and parents left property to their children, and they sold it.
And we didn't know. And we didn't know.
No, and then you look
And
at
that's
it,
the situation.
where the crime is happening. Look at Antioch.
Absolutely.
The crime is happening in Antioch now.
We didn't know.
Yeah.
And so the most important thing to take away from this part of the conversation is that legacy is key, right? And that you're not 3/5 of a person, right? And that you are able and you're capable to do these things. But again, we can't be held down by a colonized aspect of who we are. We can't let people tell us, no, we can't do it. And that's basically what was happening, even into now from slavery. They were like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And instead of us saying, fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway, we were, because of the trauma and the pain and the violence and all this other stuff.
The violence, when
Yeah.
you say, yes, I can, and then they come in.
It's like if you talk to the police, they stop you, you talk to them, and you say, I didn't do a damn thing. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. What's gonna happen to you? You can either go to jail, you can either get killed, or you might get lucky. But those are the things, and that's that perpetuated fear. It's the same thing like slavery.
And I want to just touch on that real quick before I move over here. Because you know what, with me in education, this is my thing. I live by the same degrees that you achieve. And us as black people was told education, 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 education. Because we weren't allowed to get that. You know what I'm saying? So now we have allowed ourselves to disallow ourselves again from not getting education. You understand? We don't look at it the same way. And they threw this behind it.
Absolutely.
But with this, they don't feel you're going to get education or degrees anyway. Because in order for you to even get that, you got to have a number for them to even give you some money. See, that's how the white people make it. Think about how much green they got in their damn pocket, because they be broker than us. They got a number, they credit score, they support system, they family done taught them how to do this. They was held on to this. You get white people who, they in school, not getting their degrees, and not doing what it is that they needed to do, but they there because their parents and them made them go there, and they don't even want to go there. We got black people who in school going there and ain't taking advantage of that part of their education aspects. It don't mean you need this for them. This just show them that you ain't what they thought that you were.
Absolutely.
To break you in that door, to show them I ain't need this in the first damn place.
Right.
But y'all, I got it. I got something that y'all told me that I could not get, and I wasn't gonna get.
Right.
Which is smartness. So with us being educated on that, you had said a word that brought us over here with breaking this down in education, but real quick, I just want to see if everybody know what these initials stands for.
I want to say for
You don't
me,
answer.
when from being 58 and growing up, we just had the L and the G.
Oh yeah. you see how times have changed,
Yeah, we just had the L and the G, and then the B and the T came along. I said, oh, okay.
right? Okay, so from your times, what does the L stands for you?
Oh, that was for lesbian, and the G is for gay.
That's still that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even then, they still had the two.
We got the lesbian,
Oh, you
we got
know.
the gay, okay.
Questioning.
Bi,
We got bi,
transgender.
trans,
Is it question?
yep, questioning,
Queer.
yep.
Queer.
Intersex.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Right, I'm like, what?
No.
I know, but asexual. We're gonna say
Asexual.
asexual.
Okay.
Yup.
Wasn't it?
We got two more.
Pan, is it pan?
Oh, yeah, pansexual too.
Yeah, we got pansexuals. That's why you see the dot
Absolutely.
going on.
XYZ.
And then it's advocate and ally, right?
Oh, okay.
That's what all the rest of these things stand for. Now, like you said back in the day, it used to be only 2.
And with my family, I grew up in San Francisco, and,
Oh, shit.
you know, my great-grandmother talked about how, oh, those people been around forever.
Yeah.
You know, and they talking about,
Beginning
oh,
of time.
what happened? Oh, there was 2 men who were caught in a bathhouse doing something. I was like, I don't know, 8, so I didn't really understand what was happening. But, you know, they talk about people dressing up. We go to, the Pride Parade back in the day, and, I mean, my great-grandmother would take us, and it was a parade, and then we'd go off, and, you know.
This pride has existed here for a very
For a
long
very
time.
long time. So out of all of
San
these
Francisco.
things, which 2 of these things do y'all feel should not be up in here? When you see this, what do y'all see this is?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
When you see
Yes.
these initials, these letterings,
Yes.
what do you see?
A spectrum.
A spectrum of what?
Identity.
Identity or orientations? Where your identity at?
You're sexual, because you could be trans and call yourself trans.
But that's identity. But these right here are orientations. These are sexual orientations.
The first 2?
All of them.
Oh, all.
Well, I ain't talking. Then that's what I was just gonna say. So, which one of these are not sexual orientations? Is the question.
Trans and asexual, probably.
Is it the ally?
And
Queer.
That's an orientation.
Absolutely.
Allies and orientation?
Can be.
Oh,
You can be orientation. You can be orientation. It depends on what kind of ally, what kind of advocate. Are you gay? You lesbian? You bi? Still breaks it down. These are identities. You can still identify as trans and still be a trans lesbian, trans gay, trans bi.
Trans and question.
Trans and damn question. And question.
I think also a big thing to remember, again, because obviously we didn't get through all the videos, is that can black people be this?
And that's what I was going to put it up there. Now,
Yeah.
add this word. So, when you add this word up here for our community, what does being a black lesbian, black gay, black bi, and what year we talking about?
2020.
What does being black and trans mean
a double-edged sword,
for 2020?
Oh, shit. Okay.
Why you say that?
because like, okay, so like it depends on like what I would guess like a trans woman that's black has it harder because it's like you 3 different types of minorities. You're black, you're trans, and you're a woman. So I guess it's dangerous.
I'm
What
gonna
if
give you
you're
my
a trans
card. I'll
man?
get you paid.
Your parents is. I'm proud of. I'm proud of you knowing. So what's the difference between a black trans man?
Probably more I guess like hyper masculine, like because like I study like trans like men in sports and stuff, and they like have like special like no, they don't have. I think they do have testing for I guess people that are like trans women into sports. Like there's all these like rules and stuff because they don't want them competing in the Olympics because they don't see them as like actual women. But then there's no rules for like trans like men in sports and like their testosterone levels and stuff. Like there's no constraints, which is like weird.
Exactly. So even when we bring up men or trans men, because they overlooked, underlooked, and looked through they automatically relate the trans world to women. Everything become a woman issue. And when you say gay or black gay, the first thing they say is what? HIV, AIDS.
Down low.
So, I was just
Down
saying,
low.
so when you put these initials up here, first I had these initials up here, we were just talking about the initials, right? The initials don't change. But now we put the word black up here, and it changed our perspective, our biases on these initials.
A Omega, and she said something really, really good.
Hyper.
So when we talk, not only did she say hyper, right? But when we said gay and bi, she said Atlanta. Atlanta is known for gay black culture, specifically
#1.
gay black male culture.
And Georgia is also known for being the state that does not support gay people.
Absolutely.
They are so against lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and trans individuals. There's no laws, no protections, no nothing. And you wonder why the majority of the community live in that kind of state. But it's just like, was it North Carolina, South Carolina?
Absolutely.
Remember, they were the two husbands. That's why they were divided. It was the gay states. The whole South is considered the gay South. When you look up the new statistics of us trying to put out PrEP out here in this world and educate our black people of why they need to be on PrEP, not because you gay or you bi or you trans, but because we're black. And we're sexual beings. Especially men. They will lay down with dogs and we get up with fleas sometimes. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes non-intentionally. But you got a lot of questioning individuals out here. And questioning don't mean that you're questioning who you want to sleep with or who you don't want to sleep with. You questioning who the hell you sleeping with.
Absolutely.
You don't know who that person's sleeping with or not sleeping with. So taking that little blue pill can help you, prevent you from ever having to worry about who you sleeping with or not sleeping with and going to that place and doing those things. We still have a different kind of bias when we break those things down. But before I lose my point, why did things change when we said this? When we put the word black up there? Why does this in our community changes us as a people?
Because we're already put in boxes, or we put ourselves in boxes, that you can only be this, you can only be that, you can't be fluid and.
Colonialism.
And who said that?
White people. In the beginning,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then they conform to it.
And they conform to it. So
They was against.
this right here,
And then
our
they stole our
community
identity.
tries to look past and down people and belittle people and make this community feel bad for living in a truth, right? So let me ask y'all, how many people, I ain't even gonna write this down. It's gonna be triggering, so I'm gonna because trauma, because this happens in our family. How many people in here know of ancestry in their family?
Incest?
Absolutely.
Meaning, you know, whether it's with you, your mama, your cousin, your brother, your sister, how many in here know somebody who's been touched by somebody in their family? And everybody knows about it. Everybody okay with it. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's saying nothing about it.
You mean the one that they said kids don't go off with?
Everybody know don't send your kids over to Uncle Ben's house,
Absolutely.
but Uncle Ben's still at that house.
And at the family dinner.
And at the family dinners.
And the birthday party.
But it's okay for Uncle Ben to be in the house and to be a pedophile. But it's not okay for your 15-year-old daughter or son, gay, lesbian, or trans, to be in the house. Now, where does the balance of us as a people allow that to make sense to us? What is the difference when you think that, you know, and this is for the holier than thous, where's the difference when you think that God is going to come down and give you a high five and a pat on your back for saying, I commend you, I high five you for throwing out your lesbian daughter, for throwing out your gay son, for throwing out your trans son or your trans daughter. You were the greatest parent in the world for doing that. I commend you. You did a wonderful job. But that's what we, as a black people, that's the first thing we go to belittle us. The same thing that they gave us when we looked our head up. We had riches and gold in our hand. Y'all know that, right? Mm-hmm. And then when we looked down, had a hand up, we came back up. We had a damn book. A book full of stuff telling us and scaring us and pumping fear in us against us. The only one who can infiltrate us is us. Go ahead, brother.
You mentioned, like, you know, the Bible, and the funny thing about it is in those videos, it talked about how they used Christianity to belittle and to use as punishment, and we use those same things in our everyday life as black people. We go to church every Sunday, we go to prayer service, we go to Bible study, and all those things using those same tactics that they used on us as slaves, and to continue to enslave us, to enslave each other, to enslave our families, to enslave ourselves. And I find that to be like always like really interesting that we use those same tactics that was once used against us back in the days all over again. So we take what they gave us and reuse it against us.
That's the cycle of trauma, and that's how it works. So remember when we were in the beginning and we asked the question, when we did the icebreaker, and we said, hey, how many of you love being black? How many of you, how many of you have been, discriminated against, right? How many of you have felt some type of way and have been biased towards someone? And then the last question is, how many of you love all black people? Right? Because it doesn't matter how you identify, you're still black. It doesn't matter what culture you are, if you're black, you're black. Right? And so those are key things. If you're saying that you love yourself and you love your people, you have to accept and love all people. There is no picking and choosing. And so when we talk about Christianity, and we talk about all these things, we talk about slave trade, repeated trauma, and all these things, you have to look inside yourself. If you love yourself as a black person and you say you love yourself and your community, you have to be open to loving all the community, right? And that's just something that we don't do. We can't pick and choose, because at this point to be black is dangerous. And so,
don't you think like it's different, like every person, like black people, like experience is different, like depending on like who your parents are too, like, cause it's different for somebody who's like obviously like black than versus somebody who's like biracial looking. They don't have the same like experience. I mean, yeah, colorism too, but like even if you have like, you could take a black child and you can give them white parents and they can grow up in a society with that white society and they could just be that. I feel like that's
they're gonna lose their whole blackness and understanding of that blackness in what you just said.
So I mean, like black people it varies. So like, how do we know?
But then again, right? As black people, we also have the gift of creating children in every color. You could be dark as hell, and your baby is gonna come out as white as this chair. I got them in my family. You feel me? The situation at hand is that when we think about blackness and we think about privilege, I'm gonna use me as an example. I have privilege, absolutely. I got a Spanish name, I can speak Spanish, I can understand Spanish, I'm Puerto Rican. Those are black people actually that, it was a different port. Absolutely, same people, Dominicans, the same people. So what am I gonna do with my privilege that I know I have? I'm gonna uplift my black brothers and sisters and other people who don't have the privilege that I have. And that's how you build community and legacy. So if I see that somebody needs a job, I'm gonna be like, come on, I got you, let's go get this job together. If somebody treats you bad, I got you. We're gonna go and go about it. If someone tries to jump you, and I know I got privilege, baby, I'll just hit you with my car. Because I know they're not gonna put me in jail longer than you. Does that make sense? And so, again, as us as black people, we have to utilize our privilege, and at the same time, we have to be there for each other. And I think that's what me and Omega are trying to say, is that, again, we're coming in as Black History Month, right? 365 days is Black History, to be honest with you. Everybody's culture has something black in it. But the world is anti-black. So who's gonna take care of us? Us.
And you gotta know that in your mind. Like you said, if that black person could have grew up in that white family. That white family believes what you believe, or you growing up like this, you don't have to worry about them other problems. So now that black kid don't know what to do and how to do when they get pulled over.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes.
You no matter where you grow up, you being black can't change.
Absolutely.
But can't nobody teach you how to be black but you. Because you your own kind of black. Yeah, we all black, but we all have our own lives that we live no matter what. But there's things that's going to come with that.
But it's like if you really grow up in a society where you're not around a lot of black culture, it's just gonna show within you.
It's
Like,
culture
it
shock.
doesn't change, but it won't change like the way you are, because that's the way you was raised, and that's
I
gonna
don't
shape
think
your
so.
perspective.
I don't agree with that. And the reason why is because I have a friend. This is a great example. I have a friend. She is half black and half white. Daddy used to be a drug dealer. Mama was a white hippie. Grew up in Temescal. Was sitting up there, we was drinking fucking Mickeys and shit at 15, having a bonfire in the back of her fucking house. Something my black mother was not about. You dig what I'm saying? Skipping and singing Kumbaya and never had any worries. Was just sitting on her ass the whole time. It was all about this free love, free living, bartering shit, the whole 9 yards. I went to Burning Man at 13. My mother didn't even know, because she would have said no. So when we look at people like that, manifest destiny comes into play. It doesn't matter how you were raised, because I was raised in Berkeley and Oakland. I know how to code switch real good. You feel me? And so the situation at hand is that you have to learn how to code switch. It doesn't matter how you were raised. In the end, the world is anti-black, and you're gonna learn how to survive. Because in reality, if you don't survive, you die. You know what I mean? It's real, and we have to be realistic about it. People have privilege, and again, we have to also keep them in check.